What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Tastes Like Music. Jason here, joined today by a very special guest, Jim Laspesa, drummer for the Stars, I guess you could say. He plays with Brian Wilson, has played in the past with Dave Davies, among many others, which we will get to in today's conversation. Welcome. Thanks for coming on to the channel.
Thank you for having me.
I don't know exactly where to start. There's a lot, I'm sure, to get to. I guess I'm most interested in kind of how you get to playing with someone like Brian Wilson and kind of the path to get there. So I don't know. I guess we can go all the way back, maybe to some early memories of, your first encounters with music and being a fan. I'm very interested. You and I have been friends for maybe a year or so, just internet friends, Facebook friends, that sort of thing. And everything you post is extremely interesting to me. So I'm kind of just want to connect all those dots. I kind of know bits and pieces of your life through that, but I'd like to just kind of get the full story.
Well, it's nice to meet you. And I guess it's a long journey going back to just being a kid in the late 60s, early 70s. I was born in 63. I had older sisters who bought records. They were Beatlemaniacs. And I just, I became fascinated with songs and AM radio. I'm WKBW in Buffalo, New York, my hometown. And I just loved music, and I used to play with spoons on pots and pans like a lot of little kids did. And I made a drum set out of boxes and oatmeal containers and pie tins for the cymbals. And it was just something I always loved. I would sit and watch 45 spin and listen over and over to a song and try to figure out like the science of it. And I just love music. And maybe around 1970, my older brother Michael bought a guitar and learned how to play it a little bit. And I would pick it up and pick out chords, taught myself how to play a little bit. And then he started writing these songs that were very like early 70s folk rock, Cat Stevens, Jim Croce influenced. And we would play his songs in our basement and on guitars. And then I think around 1973, my dad bought me my first drum set from a guy who lived across the street. This family, the Slatterys, who we all loved, and they played music. And his drum set became available. My dad bought it for me, and I just kind of taught myself playing along with records and with the big, the early 70s with the big bubble headphones. And I would just put them on every day after school and try to teach me, I'd listen to Sticky Fingers and Rod Stewart. Every picture tells a story, and Chicago too. Those were like big records for me as far as like trying to sort of emulate what was on the records. And so I loved that. And then I just kind of played in my basement after school and maybe got a little better. And
So what? So
asked myself,
you're a fan of music. I can tell that you're still a big fan of music just from things you post on online and stuff, and like you can tell that that's never left you. Like those early kind of experiences with music. Like it's nice to see that someone that has gotten to your level of playing is still so connected to the joy of it.
yeah, I can't imagine ever not loving it. It's just in me, it's in my soul. And I don't know, it's just who I am, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you kind of teach yourself some drums, you play guitar a little. At what point does it become more of like a thing where you're playing with other people, sort of your first
Uh,
experience with that?
well, playing with my brother for quite a while in the basement, learning his songs and playing Jim Croce songs and Beatles songs. And then, a little later in high school, I met people. We all loved Cheap Trick and Kiss and 70s rock and Angel and Black Sabbath. And we started a cover band like a lot of people do in high school, Destroyer, named after the Kiss album,
Oh,
1976.
nice.
So I did that, and I learned a lot from that. And trying to think. From there, I met this guy, Bill Manspeaker, who was a friend of mine in high school, and his uncle was this guy, Big Wheelie, and he had it was a band in the kind of upstate New York area, Big Wheelie and the Hubcaps, and they were sort of 50s revival, post Sha-Na-Na-esque kind of show band with he'd sometimes wear an Elvis suit or did like Jerry Lee Lewis songs. And it was a 50s band. And because Bill, my friend, knew that myself and a couple other people could play, we got that audition. So I became a hubcap, probably basically right out of high school, 1981. So, they were this group that I loved as a kid. They were big in Buffalo. They were on AM radio and sort of a regional thing. And I got their record for Christmas when I was a kid, Solid Grease, which came out locally, but then was reissued on Skepter. So it was sort of a thing, like not quite a nationally known band, but it was a band that I loved, and then I became a hubcap. So we learned all these songs. It was me and these two other guys I had been playing with. We learned all these 50s songs, and it was a great experience. My first real experience traveling and playing for money and just doing like little mini tours around upstate New York. And so I learned a lot from that. That was a great experience. Concurrent with that, Bill Manspeaker, who was Big Wheelie's nephew, we all went to high school together and started this band Green Jell-O in high school in Bill's basement. It was either Bill's basement or my basement. So I was kind of doing that on the side. And Green Jell-O later became Green Jelly, which I think you mentioned you had heard
Yeah.
of. But
So they had
that's a story. But
viewers may know some Green Jelly as well. They had kind of I don't know, would you call it a novelty hit? Kind of a novelty hit with the Three Little Pigs song.
it was the heavy metal version of Three Little Pigs. It's just all of these stupid ideas we had in high school. Like, let's make a song that's like nursery rhymes, but it's Rob Halford singing. It was just stoned teenagers in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was just something we did for fun. And somehow, it was billed as, let's be the worst band of all time. That's never been done. So that's kind of how it started. Like, we're the worst band that ever existed. And I mean, we kind of were. I could play, but everybody else couldn't play at all. But that was kind of the joke of it. Like, the bass player, this friend of ours, Joe, he didn't play bass, but he loved Sid Vicious and just loved the idea. Oh, I want to be in a band. So he had he had this shitty bass, but probably like the one like Paul Simonon played, but the frets were color coded. So that was the joke. Like, and color coded bass, Joe Cannizzaro. So it was just, literally like blue. I go to the blue fret. So it was just, let's be the worst band of all time. And what can we call ourselves? What's the food everybody hates, like that nobody wants to eat for dessert? Green Jell-O. Okay, we're Green Jell-O. So so it was just this funny thing we did in high school, and it became popular in Buffalo. So I guess in 1986, myself and my two friends, Bill and CJ, we were the hubcaps, Big Wheelie and the Hubcaps. We saved our money because we were also like writing they were writing these original songs. So we had a whole bunch of songs, and then it was like, let's save our money and move to LA and live in a house like the Monkees, and we're going to make it, man. And so in 1986, we moved out to LA. And then soon after, the rest of the Green Jell-O people followed us out because it was just, oh man, this is great. You got to come out. It's a lot of fun. And I saw Elton John walking down the street yesterday. You know, it was just, we were all so green, so young, and sure enough, maybe like 6 months later, we were all here. So then the original band that the three of us came out to pursue, that kind of fell apart. But Green Jello started happening, and we started playing gigs, and it was just like in Buffalo, like people started to come to see us. Like, you want to see this? It was just, you know, it was made to be a joke, but it was funny, and people just caught on. It just thought it was humorous, or it caught on, and
Ultimately, they ended up, or some version of this band gets signed to a major deal, but you are not a part of it at that point.
no, we in Buffalo we recorded a 7-inch EP, Let It Be Green Jello, which was like 8 million songs on this 45, and we had done that and pressed it up ourselves, and then after we moved out here, we released a full album that has the original version of the song Three Little Pigs, which you probably know that's like the main song. So I'm not on the hit version. We released the independent album, Triple Live Mother Goose at Budokan. Look it up on Discogs. It's, I guess it's worth money, but it's just a lot of stuff happened. A lot of stuff happened. We were young, and I moved out here so green with no life experience, and just things changed, and the lineup changed, and it became a different band, and I wasn't in it. And then it became successful, which was, I guess, was bittersweet for me. I'm not in the band. They put out their record, they got a deal, it became successful, and here I am in the record store. I worked at Tower Records on Sunset. Here I am, like, they're out on tour, and I'm pricing their CDs and cassette singles. So
So you're working at Tower, and I've seen you post a bunch of things like meeting celebrities and all these autographs and stuff that you have. We could probably do a whole separate video someday on your just time at Tower.
sure.
But so you're working there, and then what is after that your next kind of step into playing?
I was kind of looking for something to do, and this band, the Muffs, formed in LA, and I think their record was on Warner Brothers. They got signed to Warner Brothers really quick. I love the band. I love the songs. I love their album. Played in the store all the time. And then the drummer left. This guy Chris Crass, who I had known through other people, and the position became available, and I learned all the songs, and they agreed to meet with me. We played through the songs. They were really great people, and we had a lot in common, a lot of similar sense of humor. We loved the same bands, the Kinks, the Beatles, and 60s and Mersey Beat and punk rock. And so we hit it off, and I did a good enough job, and I became a member of that band. That's what happened.
So I do know a limited amount of about your career, what I've kind of been able to put together from talking to you in a little bit and looking at stuff online. And I know that you didn't end up playing on their next record. So you played with them for about a year, I believe.
Right. It was about a year. We did a bunch of tours, a US tour, played in Europe, and the first album was out. They were promoting that. You know, it was like, okay, I'm in the band. This is great. But if you listen to their first album, it's a lot of like Keith Mooney kind of drumming. So, and I'm not really that kind of drummer. I mean, I love Ringo, and kind of like more of a song drummer. I play pretty basic, and that's just my style. And so we started working on these songs for the second album, and then to them it became apparent, like, this is not quite what we want as far as like the style. um and then I got a call, like, you know, we love you. It was one of those calls. We want someone who's splashier and more Keith Mooney, and that's kind of just what we want for this record. And after Rob Cavallo produced the first Muffs record, and then I think the next record he did was Dookie.
Oh,
So I never knew whether that figured into what the producer wanted. I think it was more just the band, but I think it was like the Muffs made their record, and then the next record he did was gigantic, and it was exactly that kind of frantic, like, you know how Trey Cool plays. It's
right.
very busy, and Keith Mooney, and I can't say that that colored the decision, but they were ready to make the next record, and it was just, you know, they wanted something different. So it was another learning experience, like here I am again. Except it was like I understood, and I kind of heard all of the songs like with more simple drumming. So, you know, it was like upsetting for like a day. But then it was like, I love these people and it's okay. Then, and also the guy that they brought in was Roy McDonald, who was one of my idols. He was in Red Cross. I loved him. I loved him as a person. And I kind of knew like he was the guy they wanted at the very beginning before they made records. And so it was just simple for them, like, okay, this Roy's perfect. And they made the record, and I just became a fan, and you know, it was fine, and we're all friends. And it was another learning experience of like not even what not to do, but just taking your lumps. And
Yeah.
it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be depressed again. It was just, okay, you know,
Yeah.
I understand. So that's what happened.
So the next thing I know about, like I know some bullet points. The next thing I know about is you playing with Dave Davies. How much of a gap am I missing between Muffs and Dave Davies?
I don't think it was that much of a gap. I met these two close friends of mine, Andrew Sandoval and David Jenkins, and they had started these concerts with our other friend Paul Rock, where we would pay tribute to a group. We put on a show, pay tribute to the Kinks or the Who or the Hollies, and have a basic backing band. And then for each song, there would be a different singer. So they started doing these shows for charity, and I became friends with them, and they also played music and wrote songs, and they recognized what I did and that I could play. And I kind of fell in with those people early on. And I think maybe we did like, they did a handful of shows. There was a Who one, Everly Brothers, the Hollies. They did a Harry Nilsson, and then they did this Kinks show, another tribute show, True to the Kinks, in Santa Monica, and it was the first one that was kind of like in a bigger place. This place called the Morgan Wixon Theater, kind of like a small theater that held maybe 400 or 500 people. Tribute to the Kinks, same thing. There was a backing band of like myself, Andrew, David, and like a couple other of our friends. And we were basically the backing band. And then, like I said, each song there would be a different person that came out and sang. And I had met Dave Davies in Tower Records. He came in one day with his son, I think Christian. And I don't know if you remember the phonologue, where you'd go into a record store and you'd like, you know, it was like the only database back then where you could look at what was in print.
I do remember that actually. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
having to
like
order stuff.
you'd go into any big record store and there'd be an information desk. And how many albums did Rita Coolidge, you know, record? So you'd look up like, oh, she did like 16, but there's only 2 in print. So he came in for some reason with his son doing research on the Kinks catalog, like how many of our records are in print, or what's available, what's not. Whatever research they were doing, I met Dave, and you know, he was my guitar idol pretty much, other than Pete Townsend. And he was like, I love the Kinks. So it was great to meet Dave. And then I guess I'm going to tell this story. Um, I think his girlfriend at the time was friends with one of my bosses at Tower, and he used to buy pot from Dave's girlfriend. So we were going to do this kink show, and I asked my boss Howard, like, can you call her and see if maybe Dave would come down and just kind of watch or be there? And sure. So they talked, and Dave, I think it was kind of like right after the Kinks stopped playing. They'd done that Phobia album,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe they were on hiatus, but he had never done a solo show. So we Howard called him. I think he just agreed to come down and like meet us, or I don't know if he planned on playing with us, but he came down with his son, and he recognized me. Like he walked on stage to meet us, and he's like, oh, I know you from Tower. Yeah, because we had met a couple times at that point when he'd come back, and just
Mm-hmm.
talk to him, whatever. So he decided he wanted to sit in with us. So it was like, I think it was the first time he had ever performed solo at this small show. And we did, I believe, a 6-song set of, it might actually be on YouTube, but it was the first time he had played, and we were all really young and enthusiastic. And I think he really got a kick out of that. A, he had never done it without his brother. And B, it was just like, man, these guys know my songs. They love the B-sides. And, I think he was just, he got a kick out of playing with us because we were young, pretty good, and very enthusiastic. So we did that show, and it was amazing. It was just, we were excited, and it turned out sounding pretty good, and he had a blast. And I think, trying to think, well, after we did that, that became the precedent for future Wild Honey shows. Like, whoever we're going to do next, let's try to get the artist to participate. And sure enough, I believe the next one was Brian Wilson.
Ah,
And Brian came down and did a little set. And anyways, that's grown over the years. We've done a lot of shows since, and they've gotten bigger and really fun and pretty successful. But after the Dave show, we did the 6-song set, and then maybe like a year later, he came into Tower again, and he's like, hey, oh, hey, how's it going, man? And
yeah.
then it was like, I think I just said, like, if you ever want to do more shows, like, call me, or get a hold of us, and we'd love to back you up. And I think I like gave him my phone number on a little scrap of paper, and oh, okay, great, nice to see you again. He's just the nicest guy. You can talk to him and feel comfortable, and he's just really sweet. So sure enough, sometime after that, maybe a couple months later, he decided he wanted to do some shows. So yeah, we got the call, like, do you guys want to do some shows? Yeah. So it was great because he had never done it before, and he's an amazing songwriter in his own right. He's a fantastic singer, and he's really funny and engaging, but he had never done it. He'd never played without Ray and the band. He let us, or he let us help pick out the songs. So, the fans that we were, let's do Mindless Child of Motherhood and Rats, and go back to like the album tracks, and like, people want to hear Dave songs.
Yeah.
Let's do all this great songs that you wrote that you've never played. And we did a lot of stuff like that, along with some hits. Dave basically picked out the ones he liked, and he was just, he had fun doing it, and we think we did like a couple local shows and then a short tour and then a longer tour, and then the book came out. And I'm probably getting some of this wrong, but the book came out and the tour was sort of promoting that. And then there was a Dave Davies anthology that came out on Vel, and they had also released the Kinks records in the late 90s. So then he had things to promote, the book, and he recorded one of our shows, and four live songs from one of our shows became part of that anthology. So it was like, oh, man, I'm on a CD with Dave Davies. So
Yeah, that's cool.
it was just, oh, let's do another tour and let's make a record and let's do another live album. And it was just great traveling, learning so much from Dave and the experience, and playing bigger shows, and just playing to Kinks fanatics like we all were. And it's the same thing with Brian Wilson. I look out in the audience and I see myself. It's just, you watch the reactions. Okay, I'd like to do this song that was on the B side of, whatever it is, like Look Through Any Doorway. It was a B side that just kind of came and went. But here we are doing it. It's the song that I love. And it was just really fun to play with a legend like that who was so great and, was willing to play with these young kids who were maybe perhaps a little over enthusiastic. It was just like, we're driving to gigs in the van, and it was hard not to ask questions like, who's David Watts? Or what was, tell me about Shel Talmy, or whatever it is. It was just like, it was the balance of, we're here to do a job, but we're in this van for 3 hours and we're fans. And so it was like, kind of like the ultimate fan experience, except you had to know the songs, you had to be on time and rested, and do a good job and sing well and play well. So it was just great. I loved it, and I love Dave, and I'd love to play with him again. It could happen.
I'm sure for him to just go straight back to you guys without going through long audition processes and like trying to put it together some other type of band. There had to have been something in those initial performances that really, he obviously saw something in you guys, right?
Well, I think so. And it was just, yeah, it just fit. He had heard us play and we played together and it sounded good. And it wasn't overly technical. We weren't playing things that were busy, or I wasn't trying to be Neil Peart. There were no metal guitar solos. It was just, these guys loved the Kinks, and I guess it just worked. And he liked us, and it was beautiful.
uh in total, do you know how many years you played with him?
I would say about 4 years, and then he had a stroke and stopped playing for, I think, a good 3 years. So yeah, we did a big chunk of about 4 years of shows off and on. And I recorded a studio album with Dave called Bug with some of the other guys. And that was amazing. I mean, just, to be on one of his records, be the drummer.
Yeah, that's cool.
So we recorded that, and then he put out a number of live records through his website. There's a demo CD that we participated in. We were like, I can't remember what it's called. It's called Fortis Green. He had a handful of new songs, and we recorded really kind of charming, simple versions of these new songs. And he had an avenue to release all these recordings through his label, Metamedia, and he would sell them on the website and sell them at shows. And so there was quite a bit of stuff there, like a number of live albums, a demo CD, a studio album, and it's just a lot of stuff. And I'm proud of all of it. It was just fantastic to do.
So what year does that get us up to?
I'm trying to think. I should know this. I think maybe he had a stroke in 2001 or two. I should know this. I'm sorry, but
Oh, that's okay.
and then he stopped for a long time, and he went through a long period of recovery in England, and then he started playing maybe like 3 years later, and he had a different band at that
Different
point.
band.
Yeah,
So what year did you start playing with Brion?
I'd say it was probably 2018. Yeah, about 2018.
So we're missing a 17-year period here ish, right?
That's
So
weird. Yeah, what the hell did I do? It was that long of a gap. I mean, it's just I don't even know, like played with on other people's records and, a period of not playing and
so we were kind of like a hired gun sort of.
I guess off and on, like doing these things that I can't remember offhand. But yeah,
How
like go
how
ahead.
can I ask how does that work? Do you have a manager of your own or an agent or someone getting you gigs, or are people just coming to you word of mouth?
No, it's just word of mouth and it's just meeting people and he would be right for these songs, like or maybe just a recommendation. Like I think Jim would be good for your songs in that style and just recommendation because I'm not a schmoozer at all. I'm not an LA Hollywood networking person. I've never been. It's just not in my nature. So everything that's come to me has been out of my love of music and this particular thing that I can do well. It's not technical, but it might be what you want. Yeah, just things come to you, recommendation, or you meet people who are enthusiastic about Harry Nilsson or Slade or all these bands. It's common interest.
Right.
So I think that's like everything that's come to me is because of that.
So
And
you
through
you met Brion doing one of these Wild Honey shows, right? It's
I had actually met Brion a number of times in the store.
okay.
Yeah, because he used to come in all the time, and it was just
To the point where you were friendly with him and like would he would
yeah.
know who you were or
I believe it was 1988. He had released that fantastic first solo. Oh, I think it's fantastic. His self-titled album. He did an in-store promoting the record, and that's probably the first time I met him. But then after that, it was just he'd come in at random, like, "Do you have this record or where are you Three Dog Night albums? They're all out of print." Really? So it was just he'd come in by himself or one of his helpers, and I just felt comfortable with him because I don't know why, but I would chit chat with him about music and I actually played him. You must know the Dukes of Stratosphere.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So that second record had come out where there's a record or there's a song at the end called Pale and Precious, which is very Beach Boys, very Smile. So it was just I loved this song and Brion's here. I'm like, I want to play this song for Brion. So and he was just so unassuming. Hey Brion, I want to play you a song. Okay. So like, yeah, come over here. So we stood by the speaker. This band. I had to explain it to him. This band XTC, and they made this record that's sort of like the '60s. And there's this song I want you to hear, "Pale and Precious." It sounds a lot like your music. Great. So play. So he just, he stood there and listened to the whole song. And there's a point. It's sort of like piano, and then there's a point where everything comes in and it's so Pet Sounds,
Mm-hmm.
and at that point he like kind of laughed like, oh my god. So it was just I felt comfortable enough with him. Just it was like, oh, you're my buddy or something, because I
Yeah.
just didn't care. It was just we're just talking about music. And so I had experiences like that with him. I don't know whether he remembered me every time, but he probably did. Oh, hey, what's up? Because he's just so Brion. He is what he is, and there's no airs, or it's just, I think he just felt comfortable enough to chit chat. And
Did he know at this point that you were a player?
no, he didn't know, but similar. Well, you asked like, how do these things come along? And we talked about just common interest with meeting musicians that like the same bands and have the same interests. I met a lot of people in the early 90s. Um, I guess people called it like the power pop scene. I don't know if you even know about this, but it was just this thing like all these bands started sprouting up that loved the Zombies and the Beach Boys. And it was just, I just gravitated towards all these musicians that love the same stuff I love, the Kinks and the Beatles, and like I said, 60s and glam. And I had met there's a band called the Wondermints at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm familiar.
We made one or two records at that point that are fantastic and very, very Beatles, Beach Boys influenced. I became friends with them, just music friends, but we would see each other play, and I'd play on bills with them where I'm in this band and they're playing, and we just became friends. And they got a gig playing with Brion. It was kind of the same thing. Like, you cultivate this thing, and then the artist kind of finds out about you. So the Wonderments had done these really great records, and maybe through their manager, it was recommended, like, because Brion wanted to do some shows, or he was thinking like, maybe I could do this. And they were the perfect band for that. So they kind of became his band and started touring. And I mean, you probably know a lot of the story. He started touring regularly for the first time, and
Mm-hmm.
they did all these great shows. They made records, they redid Smile, and they were all friends of mine. A lot of the people in the band were the same people that I had met in these little clubs, and we all loved the same music. And it was a similar thing. That position, the percussion position, became available in 2018. I had known all these, or a lot of the guys in the band, for years and years. And Darian Sahanaja, who's the keyboard player in the band, he's the one that really recommended me, and thought that I could do it. He knew I loved the Beach Boys. He knew I could sing. I'm a drummer, but he felt confident that I could, play the percussion parts on the record, which I'd never really done. But it kind of just happened. Like, do you think you want to do this? Yeah. Do you think you could do it? Yeah. So I really didn't even have to auditions, because I knew Darian. He recommended me. I knew Mikey, the drummer. I knew Probin, Gregory, the guitarist, and I'm forgetting Nick Walusko, who sadly passed a couple of years ago. He was also in the band, and they were some of my best friends. So I got a call from Paul Mertens, who is the musical the MD in the band. We talked. It was a nice conversation. He asked me questions. I just kind of said, like, I love this music. It's in my soul, and I think I could do a great job. And okay, you're the guy. So it was like, okay,
Did
go
you
ahead.
did you feel like there was any kind of like learning curve with doing like percussion? Like, obviously you're going to say yes because you're not going to say no, but like, did you suddenly, after saying yes, feel like, oh shoot, I have to sort of figure out how to do this? Or was it, not being a percussionist, do you feel like, oh crap, now I have to like become a percussionist? Or was it kind of a natural thing?
Uh, no, because I love those records, and I mean, I knew that I could play the parts. They're not really complicated, and I love to sing, and I knew that I could do well with it. So then it became, okay, you're the guy. You have 2 months. You can't tell anybody, but here are the 70 songs you need to learn. And it was I had they dropped off the full percussion rig, which I set up in my living room. And then it was like homework, you better be ready. This is it.
Yeah.
You better learn these parts. And so it was a whole lot of homework and a lot of like, I'm remembering it now, it was just taken like one batch at a time. I think I learned all of the vocal parts first or listened. Basically, I got these files, which were all of the music on one channel and my vocal part in the left channel. So I got all that, and I would just drive around listening to my voice or my part come out of the left speaker. And just, I don't read music, so it was just memorizing. It was just, and a lot of these parts, some of them were kind of simple, but I mean, the Beach Boys, some of these parts were not intuitive at all. So I don't think it was intimidating, but it was just, I knew I had to focus. I knew this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I need to do all of this homework and be ready to meet new people I didn't know. And because that's half of music is like, yeah, you can come in and know the parts, but you have to be agreeable and a nice person or just someone who's not going to get wasted and blow the gig. So I had already learned a lot from these other bands I'd been in. And I think like everything that's happened to me up to this point was a learning experience. So I think I was ready and I did all the homework and I think it was 70 songs. So it was 2 months. And then I couldn't really tell anybody. So it was like this secret I had to keep from most of my friends. But yeah, I did all the work. I learned all the vocal parts, learned I had to use in-ear monitors for the first time. I had to learn the technique of learning how to sing through this system I had never used before. So it was a lot of learning and trial and error. And I learned all the vocal parts, and then I had to coordinate like, okay, now you got to learn all the percussion parts. So I would just do it back and forth, repetition, fun, 86 times, whatever it is. It's just
Yeah.
repetition. I have to get this right. I'm gonna do a great job. I love this music, and and then it happened, and we
Uh,
finally did a
so
gig. It was fantastic.
first rehearsal, how did you feel like with the band? Did it feel at that point like comfortable, or does it feel like I still have some work to do?
I think I felt comfortable mainly because I already knew more than half of the band. They were good friends of mine, and that really made the difference. And that made it a hell of a lot easier for me to meet the rest of the band. And not only the band, but the crew. I mean, it was just, it's a big organization, and I'm the newbie. But I think that gave me the confidence to just feel relaxed. And they learned soon enough how much I love the Beach Boys. And
Mhm.
I'm not just some guy, learning the parts. I love that. I mean, it's everything to me. The Beatles and the Beach Boys. That's like the top of my mountain.
Yeah.
So I think that made a difference meeting Al Jardine and Blondie and the people in the crew. I guess, I made a good impression and I was comfortable enough to be myself for the most part. But, they probably could tell that I was a little nervous, but it felt right. I felt comfortable, I felt confident, and everyone, by the way, happened to be really nice and supportive. And the rest of the people in the band that I didn't know were really great. And, you know, they were nice to me and supportive and encouraged me. And I got better at it. The first gig it was fine, but I can see how I got better and better, like anything, the more you do it.
Yeah.
So it really helped that I knew a lot of the guys and they had faith in me.
So I'm kind of interested in this, and I don't know how much you can or can't say about it, but uh, at this stage, like the rehearsal stages, is Brion extremely involved, or is it mostly like the musical director running things, and he like is Brion talking to you at all about your performances, or is it mostly happening around him?
I think there were things here and there, but it was more just that he felt comfortable with me and basically heard the parts that were on the records. So maybe he didn't really have anything to critique because I was just kind of doing what I was hired to do, like to play the parts and sing. And but not a whole lot of that. It was just he was so used to hearing things performed so well with this band. you
Mm-hmm.
know they're very meticulous about the arrangements and getting it right. And so no, I don't remember a whole lot of that. There were things here and there, like, but not too much. It was just I was doing it and they were happy and it was fun and joyful and a
So
whole lot.
70 songs, is that does Brion change the set list night to night that much, or was it mostly like a core of songs that you were playing?
Uh, I think they, at that point, they knew what would work as far as like a set and pacing, and so the songs that work well together. And they had so many tours, so much experience with that, that I think, occasionally a song won't work, but they are so good at knowing what would work and how to play it right. And does that answer your question?
So you learn 70 songs. My question is like, if you go months without playing one of them, is it suddenly called upon and you're expected to know it?
Uh, yeah, but it's just I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe there's a little time to review or something, but I don't think there was anything I'd forgotten. And granted, not every song of the 70 ended up being in the set. It was just like it's like when you join any band, like there are these things that we do sometimes, or it might be good to be ready with this medley, or and
Yeah.
then they switch things out depending on pacing and what works and what Brion is in the mood to do. But the really cool things when Brion would get excited about a random song, like because they had done so many songs over the years from the catalog before I joined, that they would occasionally bring back, like Then She Kissed Me because Al wanted to sing it, or Brion would get excited about Little Honda. Yeah, let's do that tonight. So then it was just there were a few things where I maybe didn't have a whole time to learn my part, but I already knew Little Honda and I love that
Yeah.
I it's already in me. And maybe I had like after sound check, I would review whatever part I had to fill in vocally. But by and large, it was songs that I had time to learn. But then those surprises were so much fun because it was just, oh, I can't wait to do a song from Love You, or, I'm the new guy. I'm not going to really suggest, but when these things would come along, like, uh, I'd love just once to see you. Like it was just, oh, we're gonna do that song? Yeah, we're doing it tonight. And here's your part. And it's like this part that's like the very highest part on the stack. So I mean, it was great. I think it was like we played in Dublin and we added Let the Wind Blow, I'd love just once to see you, and another song I had never done because Brion came in and was reminded of the song, or someone was singing it, whatever it was just, yeah, Brion would on occasion get excited, like, oh, I can't wait to sing that, or let's do that one tonight. And I mean, it didn't feel like pressure because it was so exciting. Like I get to do Let the Wind Blow with you, with these guys. So
Yeah.
so it was just it never feels like, oh no, I can't do this, because I love the music and the parts are, they're not all intuitive, but it's fun to learn and, listen. And it's the big thing with Brion. Like, how did he come up with these parts? How did they all fit together? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the Brion thing. And then you get handed these parts that make no sense into, like melodically. But then it's just like, oh man, that's it. And a few
Yeah.
times Matt Jardine would say, like, yeah, man, you have the money part on this one. Because they all know they've sang these songs forever. And I would get this part that's just so satisfying. It's like, oh man, I've sang that to myself 4,000 times. And sure enough, it's like, oh man, all right, Jim, like you got the money part. Or so that, like those little moments of encouragement mean the world to me. And they're just great guys.
Yeah.
They're nice people.
So you started playing with Brion in 2018.
Yeah.
So obviously the pandemic happened. Have you gone out with him since?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, we did a whole tour last summer with Chicago where we were the opening group. We played at 7 and then they would do their full show. But we did shows before that. There was maybe like I don't remember this stuff, but there was one, like the first show after COVID, I think was here locally outside at this, it's called the Beach Life Festival that they do once a year. It's just this big festival with a million acts. So we did that, and then we did some other shows, and then either one or two tours, including that tour last summer with Chicago, which was great, really fun.
Any like mind blowing experiences with Brion, like massive shows that you've done, or anything that stands out as particularly memorable for you?
Like playing in Europe, like play like again, like at a festival, but you show up and it's gigantic. It's like any of these big things you hear about, not like Woodstock, but yeah, there were shows overseas where we were part of a bill and it was 30, 40,000 people. I'm like the punk rock guy and playing to 12 people in the club. But yeah, it was just really playing to giant crowds, like certain shows, and not really feeling nervous at all. Like I'm prepared. We've done this so much. I know I can do it. And that was a great experience just to play for that many people. And, it didn't phase me. We played the Forum on the Chicago tour, and it just felt natural. So, yeah, big crowds, and also like certain shows where I remember the audience, or I like met fans that were really nice, or I love watching the crowds, like I said, because I see myself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see like kids and grandfathers and couples and like people of all ages that love this music as much as I do. I mean, it's a really touching experience. And there were a few times where I got choked up. It's just random times. I look at a girl and I could just tell she's like, this is the song I've been waiting for. And I remember whatever it is. I remember this when I was a kid, and you see the tears, and this is their moment. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's like, that's me at a Cheap Trick show in 1978. Or, it's just, I get choked up sometimes playing these songs that are so fantastic and mean so much, not only to me, but people who were there, watching, and they've stood in line. And so if there's a way you can get something out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like probably every night playing, you have to pinch yourself and thinking it like your Brian Wilson's voice is coming through a monitor in my ear.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll just look over, like turn my head a little bit, and like, there's the guy right there. And whenever they introduce Brian, and here he is, the guy that brings us his beautiful music, Brian. I mean, I don't cry every time, but it's so beautiful to see, just to know that he feels that, and hopefully he takes some of it in, and it's very touching. I mean, it's because I'm out there with the crowd. Like, I love you, Brian Wilson.
Yeah.
You mean, you're my boss, but you mean so much to me. You're in here, and Pet Sounds is my favorite album of all time, and I love so many of their records. And those moments, I mean, they introduce Al. It's just the love, and these people that just love the Beach Boys so much, or Blondie. And man, I get to see Blondie now. Like, he started doing the tours, and maybe people hadn't seen him with the Beach Boys for years and years, but just all the love that comes back at those three guys is a beautiful thing to witness and feel a part of. And the band has been doing it for so long now that some of the people come to the show not only to see the Beach Boys and the three guys, but they know they're going to see this band that plays the songs well, meticulously. And so it's just something I'm really, really proud to be a part of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you had mentioned earlier that you had appeared in Love and Mercy and in the original made-for-TV Beach Boys movie, An American Family, which I remember watching when it came out, like back in 2000. It was on VH1 or something like that.
Yep.
How did those things come about?
With the TV movie, it was the year 2000, and I knew the guy who was casting the band in the movie for the studio sessions, my friend Elliot Kendall, and huge Beach Boys fan. He got that gig, and then he wanted to use people that love the band and can play, and it was just this really exciting thing. Like, do you want to be in this? Yeah. So it was myself and a couple other of my friends. We all love the Beach Boys. We got the gig, but they cast me as the keyboard player, and I don't play. So, so I mean, I knew the songs that we were going to do. So it was funny because they kind of said it so like you wouldn't actually see I was playing the wrong chords or whatever, but it was easy. It was just, okay, act like a musician, go. It was just however many songs we did, but it was such a great experience, really fun. And we did the filming at Western, where the Beach Boys did a lot of their records, in the big room. It's like the big Sinatra room, and also in the smaller, I think it's Studio 2, where they did a lot of Pet Sounds.
Do you know,
So
sorry, do you know specifically like what keyboard player you were supposed to be? Were you like a Wrecking Crew guy or?
yeah, I mean, we were the Wrecking Crew, but it was just like period appropriate with the, just wear this, and they, work on your hair so it looks like the the right year. And what's funny is I did that, and then years later, my friend Darian Sahanaja, who's in Brion's band, he was hired to cast the studio band in Love and Mercy, the motion picture. And again, it was just, he wanted people that love the music, could play the parts, and didn't look like actors pretending to be musicians like the Archies, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
he wanted, everything to be aesthetically correct, and it was. But that's how I got that, is because he knew I loved the music, and it was fantastic. It was just a great experience to be in a movie. And
I'll have to go back and rewatch that and look for you. I have
right.
seen the movie, but
And what's hilarious is it's life imitating art. I did this where I'm playing the percussionist in the Wrecking Crew, and then I went on to be the actual percussionist with Brion. So it's just, I don't know that that happens too much, but it's funny.
yeah, that's very cool.
So I'd done the movie, it was great fun, and then Brion decided he wanted to play a concert at what's called the wrap party, where when they're done filming, there's a party for the crew and everybody who worked on the movie. Brion wanted to do it as a thank you with his band, but some of the members of his band live outside of LA. So it was decided, for whatever reason, it would be a scaled down version of Brion's band. And because Mikey, the drummer of the band, lives in Florida, they asked me to play drums. So before I had played in Brion's band, I had already done this full gig at this party in the band. So there were rehearsals for that. So I get there and, Brion's going to come in and wow, this is cool. So not really nervous, but it was a big moment. I'm going to play a show with Brion. So Brion walks in and he sees me. He's like, hey, how's it going? So he had remembered me from all these other encounters, like over the years in record stores. And so it was like right away, it's just, oh, hey, Brion, how's it going? So I wasn't nervous and it was perfect, And then I did that show. I got to play this full set with Brion, which somebody has this film of it. I don't know where it was, but they were filming it. Someday maybe I'll get a copy of it. But that was the first time I played an actual show with Brion years before I joined the band. So that was another thing that made me more comfortable with Brion and with the guys because I had already done it and I, did a good enough job. And so it's like everything, like one thing leads to another. And that's what happened to me.
Last thing I want to ask you, a couple months ago, you posted a clip of yourself playing drums with Lindsey Buckingham at, I believe, his birthday party.
It happened because my partner, Derek.
That's me.
Oh, there he is. He was playing bass in the Bangles, played for many years in the band. And we were at Susanna Hoffs's 50th birthday party at her house. And she loves to jam and sing songs. And she had a setup in her living room with some instruments. And Lindsey Buckingham was there because they're friends. And he said it, a bunch of people were playing Beatles songs and then so I want to play. So I think I'm remembering this right, but he wanted to play some songs and I think it was Go Your Own Way and Derek was on bass. And it was just, he would turn around to Derek like, man, that's the right bass line, so it was just, he was at a party with his friends having fun. Let's jam. And I think maybe I played on that song, but what happened was maybe a year later or sometime after that, he had a 60th birthday party at his house. So it became like, I played at your party. I want you guys to perform at mine. So Lindsey Buckingham's backyard, this beautiful stage set up with a PA and we were there and the Bangles were there and it was just, let's play an Everly Brothers song or whatever it was, Linda Ronstadt songs. They had the Bangles come up. He was there, like him and his brother were telling stories about when they were kids. But then it was like, come on, Lindsey, play some songs. And I guess his drummer wasn't there, or somehow I was like, well, I could, he can play these songs. Or they asked me the day before, Lindsey's drummer can't be there. Would you want to sit in? Yeah. So it wasn't rehearsed. It was just at the party and okay, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me. And okay, let's do Go Your Own Way. So it was just playing that song in his backyard, loving those drum parts. And there's a video that Derek filmed that, yeah, I think I posted it for like an hour once. That's probably when you saw it. But there's a video where we're doing Go Your Own Way. And at this point, there's this fill that I love in the middle of the song. And I played it. And then it was just like, he turned around like you got mixed. That part or whatever it was. So we had a couple of moments like that. It was just so much fun. We did 3 Everly Brothers songs. We did another song called Don't Look Down from one of his solo records. We did Linda Ronstadt's version of When Will I Be Loved and Kathy's Clown. It was just like backyard jam, but it's Lindsey Buckingham's house. And I got to do it and it felt great and it was a lot of fun. That's how it happened.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and somewhere there's a video of it. Universe.
Well,
So.
I think it's taken enough of your time. Thanks so much for coming on and talking, and it was really interesting. And you've had and are having a very cool life. So
Well, thank you for having me. And I loved meeting you because I love your channel. And like I was telling you earlier, it reminds me of that thing that I love, which is like people sitting around talking about music, talking shop, like the dudes in the man cave. And that's I love talking about music. And I think that's why I love your channel so much. And it's nice to meet you. And thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, of course. I should say that it's funny that the day we posted the Kinks video, you messaged me and said, "I think I could send this to Dave." I almost had a little mini heart attack there. I was like, maybe don't do that.
He's just a guy.
All right. Well, thanks again. Everybody watching, be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you in the next one.